Hi, my name's Jack Burke. I'm creating a YouTube channel to encourage myself to read more. In 2021, I started reading at 30, like 1 years old. I got into reading really recently in life, and I really enjoyed it. But I'm a slow reader, and I want to encourage myself to read more. And I'm hoping that creating like a little YouTube channel where I sort of review books that I've read or go over books that I like and encourage other people to read. Sorry about that. Uh, you know, I'm hoping that pushes myself to read a little more. I just burped, and if you're new and you don't know me, then you might be like, "Well, this guy is not who I want to get my reviews from for books," and that's totally fair. I get that, but I'm hoping that like I'm kind of like I'm not the smartest guy, and I, you know, I lean a little bro. People tell me I'm a little bit broish. I don't really see it, but the backwards hat probably is what does it for most. And I'm hoping to like, encourage, you know, people who aren't prone to reading to read more. And I like to like do that sort of journey together. Um, because like right now, I always go for television first, or I'll like, scroll through my phone. My phone crushes me, right? I scroll through my phone all the time. And, I want to, encourage myself to reach for the book instead of, like Pornhub. That's sort of the goal. I want to, read first, masturbate later. um, and that's kind of like the idea behind this channel. I think I'm gonna call it Jax Reads. Maybe it won't stay that, but for now, let's try it. And I think that the problem for me is like I've looked for other people that are talking about books and stuff, but men my age sort of fall into two categories of readers, right? You've got you've got the nonfiction guys who are, they're reading basically uh, Civil War biographies about generals that died 150 years ago, and that's great. Good for them. Or you've got guys my age reading, and it's just straight fantasy. It's it's your Star Wars prequel books, your uh, Lord of the Rings, and like of course those are great books, and I would love to read some of those in the future, but they're a little advanced for me right now. So I just stick to fiction. Right now, I've only really gotten into fiction. I think I've read like one biography, and I would like to do more reading for those genres, but I think that there's kind of a middle ground that I would like to sort of intercept on, right? And that's sort of the area of guy who reads but isn't interested enough in the history of oil tankers to read 500 pages on them, and also a guy who's like doesn't like the Marvel universe enough to read the origin story of Wolverine, right? That's not, there is a guy in the middle, and I hope to be that guy in the middle who's looking for books that are easy to read, interesting, maybe funny, maybe messed up, right? But something that they can get through, right? Right now, like when I read, it takes me weeks, it takes me months to finish a single book, right? To finish a 400-page book, it's going to take me a month usually, right? And I would like to be able to read about 2 to 3 books in a month. That's my goal for this year. That's like what I really want to encourage myself to do. That's going to be extremely difficult for me because I read at a very slow pace. I read 70 pages in a book yesterday, and it took me about 3 hours. Um, and if that's normal, like let me know. I would love to hear if that's like pretty normal, but I don't know. I think it's normal, but I don't know. So I read at a slow rate. I want to read more. Sometimes the slow rate it discourages me, right? It's like I'm never going to get through this book, right? I do have a couple rules, right? Any book I start, any book I start, I finish it, no matter what, right? That is like very important to me that I finish what I start because I am so new to reading. I feel as though if I give up on a book, I might literally never read again. I might just never do it again because I I want to push through things that I'm not necessarily like that excited about, right? To me, it's almost too easy to like bail on stuff you don't like nowadays, right? You can decide you're scrolling through TikTok within 1 second. You can decide if you want to move on or not, right? And so I think that I'm like too used to that sort of comfort zone. So with books, I push myself like I'm not enjoying this book, but it might get better, right? I might end up liking the characters. And even if I don't like it, then at least I can complain about it at the end and be like, God, I fucking hated that book, right? That's how I felt about it. I read, The People We Meet on Vacation, and it's like a rom-com. It's just bad. And I want to say that too. Anybody who writes a book, and if you have a finished book, amazing. That's so incredible, and I'm so happy about that. I'm like so impressed by that sort of human being. And if I am critical on a book, who the hell am I, right? I'm just saying I didn't like it. It didn't hit for me, right? And that's how I felt about the like People We Meet on Vacation. But I'll talk about that book at another time. But basically, I knew within the first 50 pages that this book was not for me. This book has nothing to do with my life. It's not interesting to me. And I like a rom-com. Like, I like a love story. I'm into it. But this was not hitting for me. And I powered through the end. And I'm happy it did because it led to some funny conversations. Because it's basically written for, like, 24-year-old women. And I met a few of them. And they were like, oh, I love that book. And they're like, why the hell are you reading it? But the first book we're going to talk about is a book that basically like solidified that I love to read and I want to read more. And that's the book Cherry. So let's talk about it. All right. So the first book that I'm reading for this series of I've been saying too much, but I'm going to get better at that. This is just my first video. So what can you do? I'm trying to do it non-scripted as possible. And, we'll see how that works out. Obviously, fudge, I burped again. 2 burps in 1 episode. That's so stupid. Gosh, damn it. I'll try and get rid of the burps as quickly as possible. But I can't promise anything because I want to be, myself. I like to burp. I think things like that are funny. And, we'll see if it works out. You probably if you're disgusted by it, let me know and I'll get rid of the burps in the future. I just drink a lot of seltzer water, so I could probably cut back. All right, that's a little rant about nothing. But basically, I want to talk about books I've read. This is the first book I want to talk about. This is the book that kind of did it all. It's from the library, so you can't really read it, the top of it, but it's called Cherry, right? It's a book by Nico Walker, and it's a fiction book about an unnamed character and his struggles with being a teenager, the Afghan war, and then becoming a heroin addict, and then he becomes like a bank robber. And that sounds like a lot of things, but the whole book is like so nonchalant about how they approach, how the narrator speaks about all of it, and it just slowly kind of happens over time. And I just love this book right away. This book was kind of a game changer for me because previous to this book, I had read any book my wife finished and she was like, oh, I think you'll like it, I would read. So I read a lot of like Sally Rooney and a lot of like love books and, relationship books that they're and Sally Rooney I love, but there's a lot of, those books maybe aren't written for women, but they were written by women. And, as much as I enjoyed them, this book was a total change of pace for me, right? Cherry is it's got so much action in it. And the way the narrator describes, being a teenager, right? It's so on the money of, you just are so, it's so blasé. It's so, you know, he's so direct about his descriptions of things, and he doesn't hold any punches, right? And apparently, he wrote it in prison. Nico Walker, I guess it's basically his life. The writer ended up in prison for robbing banks and was a heroin addict, and he was a veteran as well. And so, the book is about his life for the most part. So maybe it is closer to a biography than it is a nonfiction or a fiction book, but I still just love like the way he describes things. My favorite quote in it is, I just love this line. This line made me laugh out loud. On page 151, he's talking about being on base in, I think it might be the Iraq War or the Afghanistan War, whatever. He's a medic in the Afghan War, we'll say, and he's talking about how there's some pornography on the base, and then he's got this line in it, and it's just so funny and so messed up that it just kills me. He goes, the fuck van was bad for morale, right? And so he's describing how the guys on the base were all, watching the fuck van, which is basically Bang Bus. I don't know. This is a lot of porno talk in this first episode, and it's not meant that way. I don't think there will be that much porno talk in the remainder of the series. But he's talking about basically how the guys watch this porno called Bang Bus. In the book, he calls it Fuck Van. And if you've never heard of it, I hate to describe it, but I will. It's basically men drive around in a bus and they find women. They pretend like they just met these women, and then they seduce them with money. And, it's all fake. It's, porno, but whatever. And in the book, the guys are watching it and they love it. And then they see one of the women is wearing a wedding ring. And this destroys the morale of the base, right? Because they all have girls back home that say they're not cheating, but who knows? They're all kids. So I just think the line, the fuck van was bad for morale, that line got me so good. I just was like, damn, this is the funniest thing, the saddest thing too, I think I've ever read. And the way Nico Walker writes, my wife read the book and she actually despised it. It's not for everybody. The way he talks about women, is probably misogynistic and sexist. My argument on it was that it's written from the point of view of a kid, a kid in his teens and then in his 20s and then battling heroin addiction, right? And so my point of view on it was that is how young men, unfortunately, a lot of times think about women in their minds, right? And it's is it okay? No, but I just thought it was interesting. She had a totally different reaction. He also doesn't use proper grammar a lot. He has sentences that are fragments and stuff like that. But it's perfect for a guy like me because I don't know what any of that stuff is anyways. Grammar is my least. I stink at grammar. I know some big words, but goddamn, I sound so stupid right there. But I know words, but when it comes to commas and stuff like that, I'll never know, right? So she was saying it's written really strangely, and I understand that, but it made it for a really easy read. It's almost like stream of consciousness, where he's just sort of describing everything in a really unique way. And then, but very, it's unique because it's so direct. It's let's see. I found out I was colorblind. End of sentence, right? He just is quick. There's no flowery language where some of the writers I I really love. Damn, that seltzer water's killing me. I really loved John Updike's books. I've read a few of those. And he, to describe himself being colorblind, it would take about 3 pages, right? But Nico Walker, very different style. And I just thought it was really gritty. I loved it. I thought it was such a great book. Usually a book takes me, like I said, 3 to 4 weeks. I read this book in a week. It's only 380 pages, something like that, 360 pages. But I cruised through this. I was hooked right away. I just like, I just thought it was really interesting. The movie looked horrible. I didn't watch it. There's the movie. If you watch the trailer for the movie, it's like super, like it glamorized it. It puts a romance on it. There is no love lost in this book. There's no romance to be had in this book. It is very raw, and that's what makes it so good, I think. So I think the first book I would recommend, or I don't know. I don't know if I'm doing recommendations. I don't know if I'm doing reviews. This is just the first episode anyway. But my first book that I'm talking about, my first topic, is the book Cherry. If you've read Cherry, go tell me what you think about it. Like and subscribe on this video, please. I know that there's no other stuff yet, but I am trying to produce more. And I think this is a good start. So Cherry's a sick book. I've recommended it to a few other guys who have actually read it. My friend Igor Martinez, who's a funny comic, and Will Noonan, who's a really funny comic. They both read it, and they both agreed they loved it. I do think that women might not like it, but if you are a woman and you've read it, please let me know what your thoughts are, because it's just really fucking great. It's just a fucking great book. And if you're trying to encourage somebody you know to read, and they're sort of like me, like a kind of a big oaf, this is a good book to recommend. This book will revitalize their interest in reading if they ever had one, or it will spark an initial interest in reading if they're looking for one. So I would go with Cherry. It's sick. You can't really see it, but there is like a skull and crossbones. It's like all the stars make up a skull, which is pretty badass. But no, this is the first book I'm going to talk about. This is the first book I talked about. This is the first book I'll recommend. I guess that's sort of like the end of the recommendation aspect. I do know that this is maybe a weird format, and I don't really know what the format is completely yet, but I just wanted to create something and put it out there that's going to push myself to read more. Go ahead and like, subscribe to the channel. I think it's going to be fun. Tell me what you're reading. I want to know what you're reading. Follow me on Goodreads. I'm on Goodreads, and it's I fucking forget the name of it. It's like Jack Burke or something like that. But I try and post stuff there. And if you could think of a better name for the channel, Jack's Reads, that'd be good too. I would like to hear that. I'm reading a book right now called Boy's Life, and it's pretty good. And that's maybe the next one I'll do. Maybe I'll try and push myself to finish it this week so I can make a video about it for next week. If you have any ideas for like segments or anything, like let me know, because I want to do this and I want to do it right. So thank you so much, and thank you for watching like the first episode of Jack's Reads.